Now we've covered what cell respiration is, but we've only covered what cell respiration is in the presence of oxygen. Oxygen is the ultimate electron acceptor. So in order for glucose to be broken down, it needs oxygen present. Oxygen present in order to get into the mitochondria via active transport, and also at the end of the electron transport chain. Now, some organisms can't survive when there's oxygen. Sometimes our cells don't have oxygen readily available, but we still need ATP to be made. So we're going to go over kind of backup plans or other organism plans if oxygen isn't in fact present. So to start, what is anaerobic respiration? Anaerobic respiration is a process that occurs without the presence of oxygen, a process that is going to generate ATP. Now, because oxygen isn't able to be an electron acceptor, sometimes other molecules can readily accept the electrons. Sulfate can accept electrons, nitrate, and also hydrogen sulfide. Obligate anaerobes are organisms, primarily they're special types of bacteria that can't survive when oxygen is present. So their body process in order to make ATP is anaerobic. Now there's another kind of anaerobe, facultative anaerobes. This is typically an organism or a type of cell which is able to flip-flop. So our muscle cells, we need oxygen. So when we have oxygen, our cells are going to do the normal cell respiration via aerobic, having oxygen available. However, sometimes after strenuous activity, exercise, running, our cells don't have a lot of oxygen present. So our cells can do an alternate road, an alternate process in order to make a small amount of ATP. So here's a pretty good summary of not cell respiration, but a summary of anaerobic respiration. So going into this, the first step, glucose turning into pyruvate. That's going to happen. We're in the cytosol. Glycolysis is going to turn into or be broken down or apart into 2-pyruvate 3-carbon molecules. Then we come across a crossroad. Does the body have oxygen or does it not? Without oxygen, another name is called fermentation. So glycolysis is going to keep going by regenerating NAD positive. NAD positive, please keep in mind, it is an oxidizing agent. So it is going to accept or be reduced. It's going to accept electrons and hydrogen. This is a process that will occur in the cytosol, as I already stated. Obviously, no oxygen is needed. And what pyruvate turns into, it's going to be broken into ethanol or ethyl alcohol, and also carbon dioxide will be released. And from this process, we will make a minimal, compared to the electron transport chain and chemiosmosis, not that much. ATP fermentation does make 2 ATP molecules. Now on the other side, a little bit of a summary, so for comparison from the last section, respiration releases energy from the breakdown of food. Again, glucose into pyruvate with oxygen present. This happens in the mitochondria, and oxygen is required because it is the final electron acceptor in that electron transport chain. And overall, carbon dioxide, water, and up to 32 total ATP are generated. Now, depending on the type of organism, that's going to basically be the factor in determining which type of fermentation is occurring. So fermentation, meaning it is without oxygen or an anaerobic process. So on the left, one type of fermentation is called alcohol fermentation. So pyruvate is going to turn into ethanol, which is a type of alcohol, and also make some carbon dioxide. Examples of organisms which undergo this process, many types of bacteria, and also yeast does this as well. So for beer, wine making, baking, anything in which we put yeast and carbon dioxide, it makes it bubbly, fizzy. Usually that's a type of alcohol fermentation, and there is alcohol present. The other type of fermentation is called lactic acid fermentation. And this, again, both these start with pyruvate, so 3-carbon molecule from glucose being broken down. So this also starts with pyruvate, but now instead of turning into an alcohol and carbon dioxide, no carbon dioxide will be released, but lactate will be made. Now, examples of organisms or cells that undergo this type, certain types of fungus, again, other types of bacteria, and human muscle cells do this as well. Now, where do we see lactic acid being made by this type of fermentation? No oxygen present, making cheese, yogurt, acetone, and methanol, and that actually is a type of alcohol as well. Now, it was thought that lactic acid or lactate buildup typically caused muscle cramping, but a recent idea kind of showed by scientists that yes, lactic acid does build up, but over time it's able to get itself to the liver to be regenerated back into pyruvate, and hopefully the body has replenished oxygen for normal cell respiration to take place. To understand it, oops. All right, so where do we exactly get the glucose from for cell respiration? So, a lot of the foods that we eat, they may not taste sugary to us. We have to keep in mind that certain things like starch is a polymer of glucose molecules. So that's one place where we get our glucose from. Another place is in our own body. Glucose, excess glucose, is stored in a long polymer called glycogen, and it's stored in our liver and our muscle cells. So when we are in need of making energy, our body takes our reserves from those locations. Also, when we eat vegetables, things again that we don't necessarily think as being sweet, within their cell walls, it's made of cellulose, which again is long polymers of glucose molecules. Another thing that you need to note is that fats and proteins also assist in different parts of cell respiration. So if you look at the diagram on the right, you see fats, which we know is in a lot of our food too. Glycerol molecule or part of fats, it helps assist in one of the 10 steps of glycolysis, breaking glucose into that pyruvate. The fat part, typically of triglycerides, assists in making acetyl-CoA. And then on the right, you can see proteins. Now, the only way that a protein can help, it has to be broken into its amino acids, and very important, the amino group, NH3, has to be removed. And when the NH3 gets removed, it's released by our body as waste called urea.